They have an unwillingness to just settle. They continue to push themselves, and they continue to push the limits of what they think they can do.
Paul may be talking about music, but Metallica did whatever they wanted off stage, too.
In at number 23 on our badass list is Metallica's James Hetfield. He's a poster child for Jägermeister abuse, hates to bathe alone, loves to demolish dressing rooms. Hell, James even survived severe burns and a tour with Guns N' Roses. Metallica's unparalleled metal mayhem made James Hetfield a hero to adolescent males the world over.
Our kind of music, being for angry young men out there, drew a lot of angry young men to our shows. Sweaty, stinky bastards that just wanted to let loose, and that's what we were.
From the summer of the year 2000, VH1 Rock Show Top 40 Badasses of Rock and Roll. Now, some of this is online currently, so I'm going to cut those bits out and present to you what's not online currently. Dio, Ozzy, Metallica, and a few others. So, without further ado, let's roll.
In at number 23 on our badass list is Metallica's James Hetfield. He's a poster child for Jägermeister abuse, hates to bathe alone, loves to demolish dressing rooms. Hell, James even survived severe burns and a tour with Guns N' Roses. Metallica's unparalleled metal mayhem made James Hetfield a hero to adolescent males the world over.
Our kind of music, being for angry young men out there, drew a lot of angry young men to our shows. Sweaty, stinky bastards that just wanted to let loose, and that's what we were.
And whenever guys like that are around, women can't be far behind.
In the early days, women were thought of as objects, and they're here for us to take advantage of. Tub tarts, shower, 8 women washing you down at once, not a bad feeling.
The band's legendary boozing earned them the pet name Alcoholica.
Alcoholica, justified, absolutely. 22 years old, we're drinking as much as we can. I mean, we were very, very heavy drinkers.
That was the Jägermeister days. That was, we had discovered this lovely after dinner drink called Jägermeister, but there was a certain opiate in it that got you extremely violent.
Never cared for what they say.
At a 1992 Montreal show with Guns N' Roses, Hetfield earned serious badass points for becoming a human torch.
I walk forward, I walk back. The pyro guy doesn't see me that I've walked back out there. A big colored flame goes right up under me. So I'm burnt, all my arm, my hand completely down to the bone. Side of my face, hair gone.
Fortunately, James recovered from his third-degree burns and resumed his wild ways.
The destruction was fun, man. That was really fun. We'd get to a gig and just smash the hell out of it, the dressing room. There wasn't any thought of, what we were really doing. It's just we gotta smash stuff, or whatever the bill was. It was all worth it. It's all rock and roll. It's all being on tour.
James has always been the meanest, but just that's his rough exterior.
Give me fire, give me that what I desire. Ooh, yeah.
Ronnie James Dio comes in as badass number 22 in a big way. He invented satanic sign language, he knows how to get on the wrong side of a raging mob, and he never takes no for an answer. Dio may look like he made a bad deal with the devil, but he's just got one hell of a nasty attitude.
My attitude has always been, screw you. This is what we are, this is what we do. We don't care what you think of us, we know what we are. We know what we're going to be. We refuse not to be successful. I'm one of those kind of people who just doesn't take no for an answer. Don't tell me I can't do something, because I'll do it. I'm going to shove it up your butt.
One time, the band walked off stage because of technical problems. Left alone to fend for himself, Dio let the booing crowd have it.
I guess I let about every 4-letter, 5-letter, 6-letter word you could possibly imagine loose at that audience and told them they could all perform great sexual acts upon each other if they'd like to. And they didn't like that very much, and I was banned from Philadelphia for 5 years.
It takes more than an unruly crowd to stop Dio. In Norway, his nasty temper started a riot.
I think somebody threw something at me, and I jumped in the audience and clocked him one, and the audience attacked us, So we just had a complete riot.
Dio will take on any foe, and size doesn't matter.
He's not scared of nothing, you know. At some airport, some guy's having a go at him, and Ronnie jumped up on a chair and smacked him in the mouth because he was real tall, this guy. And Ronnie's only small, you know, he jumped up on a chair and smacked him in the mouth. That was great, you know.
Dio's always doing the devil's work. In fact, he invented that satanic salute that's become a Stadium Rock staple.
Well, invented, I can't say. Certainly, probably the first one who really made it the symbol of hard rock. We're talking about badasses. You got to taste it all. You know, life is out there like a good glass of wine. Taste it, and get drunk once in a while.
Up next, Davil Lee Roth's surefire way to get the babes backstage.
I don't know who made up this list, but Dio should have placed higher. But like Tony Iommi said, he had to die before people would say how great he was. Now, we said how great he was, but he had to die before mainstream media gave him the level of respect that he deserved. Just my opinion.
Hopping and bopping his way to number 21 on our Badass Countdown is the one and only Davil Lee Roth. He developed a backstage pass incentive program. He's an avid partier, and he's got an onstage style all his own. No one works the stage harder than Diamond Dave, so when it comes to playing the showman, Dave always leaves a lasting impression.
I remember going to a Van Halen concert and seeing Davil Lee Roth in like assless pants or something. And I remember thinking, if Davil Lee Roth walked into a bar in those pants, he would get his assless ass whooped.
You've got this guy who could just prance around on stage and, ride into a concert, right across an arena floor on a microphone shaped like a penis and just get away with it. I mean, that's got to make you a badass.
I kind of enjoy seeing those old videos of Davil Lee Roth kind of swinging through the air in spandex.
When he toured with Van Halen, Dave was on top of every little detail.
One time we played in Pueblo, Colorado, and I walked backstage and there was a few brown M&Ms mixed into the bowl, and I went into full Shakespearean mode. What is this before me? And I trashed the place.
To make sure he got his pick of the primo groupies backstage, Dave developed a little system for his roadies.
What I had said was to the crew, everybody get 5 backstage passes, and if you go ahead and initial it, then whichever gal I wind up with, if it's got your initials on it, you gave her the backstage pass, you get $100.
I definitely think that guy can probably still out-party just about anybody.
His wild ways landed him in jail after a 1993 drug bust in New York City.
Here's a guy who's not busted for trashing a hotel room. He's not busted for beating up his neighbor. He's buying a $10 bag of pot in Washington Square Park, and for that, the guy ends up getting more press than Princess Di.
Somebody said to me, Dave, what should I know to make it? I said, get used to sleeping in your clothes. Learn how to do that. He said, how will I know when I've made it? I said, when you can spell subpoena without thinking about it.
For those who grew up in the 80s, Davil Lee Roth and Van Halen were the essence of rock and roll. They were amazing musicians, had an incredible stage show, and of course they had the looks. Guys wanted to be them and girls wanted to, well, we know what the girls wanted. They made some killer music and their videos left very little to the imagination.
Oh, all right. Did we really need to see his rear end? I guess this is for all the ladies out there, but ugh.
It's Kane, and we're digging in deep here on the Rock Show Top 40 Countdown of the biggest badasses of all time. We're getting together the people who have partied the hardest and broke the most rules and sometimes paid the price. And now, as we gathered these stories, we kind of have come to really like the word badass. We have a lot of fun with that term, but there's some bands, Stone Temple Pilots included, that seem to have a little trouble with the word.
It's weird talking about a badass.
All right, we're up to number 20 on the countdown of the biggest badasses of all time. We got 3 people in this slot. We got Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison. All 3 had a lot in common. They made music in the same time period. They totally lived that sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle. They created music that expanded the boundaries of rock and roll, and they all died at 27. So we sat around and really couldn't decide which one of these 3 was the bigger badass.
You thought you had it, found yourself a good girl.
Grooving in at number 20 and forever linked in rock history are Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and Jim Morrison.
Well, tell mama, you're all about it.
Janis Joplin. Her bedroom antics are legendary. She was arrested for talking dirty on stage, and she gave the finger to the folks back home in Port Arthur, Texas.
What it mean? What it want? What it mean? What it want?
Janis Joplin had an uncontrollable sex drive and a serious wild streak. In 1969, she was arrested during one of her shows for using vulgar and indecent language.
That's a chick that has bigger balls than all the dudes I know. You know, she did. I mean, you can't argue with that voice. You know, nothing is badder than Janis Joplin's voice. Just the sound of it, you know.
Anything I can do, anything, baby, I can do for you. Tell your mama, what mama,
Swinging from both sides of the plate, she was the poster child for the sexual revolution. Her libertine lifestyle opened doors for scores of female rockers to come.
She also discovered the drug culture and immersed herself in it like everything else in her life, full on. The drinking, the grass, acid, heroin, speed, and sex with men and women.
So want to use you, so want to hold you, want you, talk, listen, hold you, want you, need you, hold you, need you.
The night before she died, she was in the whiskey. I served her 3 buckets of Southern Comfort on the rocks. That's what her favorite drink. My father turns to me and says, put a case of Southern Comfort in Janis's trunk. So I put it in her trunk. The next morning when I woke up on the news, they said Janis Joplin died of alcohol poisoning. So for 3 days, I thought I killed Janis Joplin.
Hey, Joe, where you going with that gun of yours?
Jimi Hendrix, rock's most combustible guitar god. He destroyed a fortune in gear, sang the praises of the psychedelic experience, and was a notorious ladies' man.
Hey, Joe, you better run on down. Goodbye, everybody.
Hendrix set psychedelic rock on fire at the 1967 Monterey Pop Festival, where he made his axe-scorching U.S. debut.
Jimi Hendrix was the rock star personified looking at him. I mean, Hendrix was the first guy to really take a heavy guitar and make it a hard rock thing.
He shattered all the rules, not to mention dozens of Stratocasters, spawning legions of followers in the process.
Guitar playing before Jimi Hendrix, for me, is a complete mystery. To me, the guitar was invented by Jimi Hendrix.
Hendrix also laid waste to plenty of taboos. He used the rock stage to preach about the glories of drug use and free love.
I mean, that makes him badass because he was out there blazing a trail that people weren't doing.
The number 19 badass on our list is former AC/DC lead singer Bon Scott. He was a ferocious drinker and a rock and roll gladiator. Bon Scott may have lived a short life, but the hard-drinking, bar-brawling Aussie managed to cram a lot in.
Bon was one of the baddest people I've ever known in my life. There's a man who took no crap from anybody. I've seen him beat a few people up without any reservations at all. He had my attitude. Don't give me crap, I'll come after you. He'd just leap into the audience and away he'd go. Bon was one of the ultimate badasses.
Their power ballad success, you might go, how in the hell are these guys badasses? They got the image and attitude, sure, but what makes them a badass? They survived.
Aerosmith lived the life. I mean, they were rock stars, and they lived the life of rock stars. And here's a band that's bigger now than they were then. They've lasted for generations, and I think it's because they always had that image of rock stars. They lived the life. They had credibility.
Credibility. Joe Perry and Steven Tyler weren't named the Toxic Twins for nothing. They got the stories to back it up.
Number 18 on our badass list, Aerosmith. They were legendary substance abusers, notorious skirt chasers, and they self-destructed, but came back badder than ever. Aerosmith, 5 scrawny dudes who raised risque rock to high art and had to be forcibly restrained from partying themselves to death.
When we were filming them, like 10 minutes before the guys got there, these people came in, the SWAT team, and they went through the whole set. I'm like, what is this, the FBI or something? It's like, we're looking to make sure that there is no drugs or alcohol within, 10-mile radius of where Aerosmith is going to be, because if there is, they will get it.
Steven Tyler had the nastiest habits and the wildest lifestyle.
I thought I could never go a day without a hit of dope or a pill. That down feeling like, hey, baby, like one, it took all my inhibitions away.
But drugs and booze were never as big a priority for these boys as getting it on.
Because sex rules, it's like everything. You go to your therapist and you go, wow, I looked at this girl, and all I wanted to do was drop to my knees and give her 50 on the spot.
The sex and drugs caught up to them in the mid-'80s, but Aerosmith always seems to survive with their badness intact.
The toxic twins, Joe Perry and Steven Tyler, and that's, I think, what makes them able to span the generations as well as they have.
Any guys that are that ugly and chicks just think they're the sexiest thing in the world, that's pretty cool. Steven and Joe are badasses.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, baby. Take away the drugs and there's more time for coming.
In at number 17 on our list of rock and roll badasses, Kiss. 4 grown men who like to play with fire, have the longest tongues in rock and roll, and are known for their legendary sexual appetites. Kiss bass player Gene Simmons put the X in sexual excess. He claims to have done the nasty with thousands of women.
Groupies, they love you. They don't want anything from you. They just want to be around you.
There's definitely an attraction to some guy who lives outside the norm, kind of like the pirate aspect of rock and roll, rape and pillage and move on to the next town.
Gene claims that in 30 years of propositioning women, he always goes home with someone.
When we were shooting the Metal Years, all the girls that he had walking around in the lingerie, he kept trying to pick them up and go, hey, would you like to go out with me right after this and we could, party together? And some of them would say yes, and some of them would say no. I go, Gene, what are you doing? Why do you do that? Don't you feel bad when they say no? And he goes, no, because I look at it like this. You ask 20 girls to go out with you, one's going to say yes. And I go, you don't feel bad about the 19? He goes, I don't care.
The stuff that's important to me is sex. And I want to write about it, and I want to talk about it, and I want to do it any way that I want to do it.
After 25 years, the pyrotechnics and Gene's legendary love gun are still going on.
This press conference, if you don't know, is being simulcast to 58 countries around the world. That's right. Yeah, this is basically a way for Gene Simmons to say hi to all his illegitimate children.
Coming up, 2 of the toughest guys in rock and roll. You don't want to meet Glen Danzig or Henry Rollins in an alley. It's ex-Misfits frontman and hardcore solo artist Glen Danzig, who doesn't take kindly to that kind of talk. As a matter of fact, he doesn't take kindly to much.
Roaring in at number 16 on our list of rock and roll badasses, Glen Danzig. Small in stature, but with a big attitude. He hates paparazzi, hates stupid fans, and anybody who mentions the Misfits. Don't cross him. This tough guy's always ready to rumble. Badass Glen Danzig has a take no prisoners philosophy.
No one has the right to take my life or take something away from me. Who gave them that right? Just the fact that they would think that they have that right means they die. They die. Straight up.
Glen Danzig is just a dark, dark presence, and he strikes fear into everybody. I mean, it's like, is he the man or is he like the demon?
A question often asked, but pity the person foolish enough to suggest his lyrics have satanic overtones.
So everyone who says that Satan can go suck my...
And how does Glenn feel about paparazzi? Take a picture. We dare you.
People, you know, need to realize that you're a person with your own space. And occasionally, especially if I'm on stage and the camera's not supposed to be there, I'll take the mic cord, wrap it around their camera and yank it. And then if they want anything after that, come get it.
And if you really want to get his goat, just ask him about his old band, the Misfits.
Since the Misfits and Sam Hain were all on Plan 9, which was your record label. Which was your record label.
You're treading on thin ice, Once I almost threw Ricky Rackman in a furnace on Headbangers Ball. Part fun and part because he was just asking like stupid questions.
I was on a radio show, and I saw on the schedule that Glenn was coming in about an hour after us, so I happened to mention it, and then the DJ guy said, "Oh, Scott, you like Glen Danzig, don't you?" And all I said was, "Yeah, I love Glen Danzig and the Misfits." And that was it. And Glenn apparently was on his way into the station in the limo they sent to pick him up, heard this, and had the limo driver turn around because he says, if I go down there, me and the Scott Ian guy are going to get in an altercation.
Glenn is just, he's a toil. He's like the base of intimidation, and he strikes fear into anyone.
In at number 15 on our badass list, Henry Rollins. He's an unusual breed of badass. Clean, sober, and scary as hell. He doesn't crash hotel rooms, he cleans them. He goes ballistic if he has to wait for the can, and just try to get Henry to shut up.
You wanna know why? 'Cause I'm a liar. Yeah, I'm a liar.
Badass rocker Henry Rollins redefines the term.
Badass is not doing drugs, not doing drinking alcohol, and being like so straight edge, and that's Henry Rollins. That is truly badass. Okay.
How can I be a badass when I vacuum my own room? How can I be a badass when I fold the towels I've used in hotel rooms so the hotel room has a neatness factor so the maid does not think I'm a slob?
But if you give me just one more chance.
Henry has a soft spot for chambermaids, but he's hard on everyone else.
From the tattoos and the chiseled body right down to the fear he strikes in people just by looking at him. I mean, it's just Henry Rollins. He's a hardcore badass.
I would say you probably don't want to mess with Henry. You know, if you're some idiot out there trying to bait him and ask him a stupid question, you probably shouldn't do that. I mean, you shouldn't do that anyway, but a lot of interviewers are idiots and need their faces smashed in.
When nature calls, don't keep this guy waiting.
We were honored to share a stage with him at the Whiskey, and we also did a show in Boston at the Channel with Henry.
Before it burnt down.
Only one bathroom in the whole joint, and guess who's outside the door ready to kill whoever's ever inside because he had to take it.
Let me in! I gotta...
Henry. I'm always in Henry's way, man.
Even a badass in denial like Henry Rollins wouldn't mind getting bumped up a few notches on the list.
I don't think there's really a way to be a badass these days. And even if you murdered somebody, well, gee, don't they just do the book and the TV special and the DVD and VH1 just behind the scenes or behind the music, right? Maybe that's what I should do. I'm dying to be one of those, you know. Maybe I should waste somebody. Maybe I should get off that, deviate from that tofu and mineral water diet and get crazy.
From his days as lead singer of Black Flag to his more recent solo.
Girl, you know, can't look you in the eye.
Strutting in at number 12, it's the punk pariah Courtney Love, a former stripper turned exhibitionist rocker. She lived through a battle with drugs, survived one of the craziest couplings in rock history, and she's always getting into tips. Courtney Love doesn't give a damn about her reputation. and didn't think twice about upstaging Madonna at the MTV Video Music Awards in 1995.
Hi, Courtney. Come on up.
Should we let her come up?
Yeah.
No, don't, please.
Come on, Courtney. Well, Courtney. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'd like a good entrance.
Well.
I'm gone. I looked. Did I bum you out? Are you pissed at me?
Courtney Love, as far as women go, she is the definition of just hard-ass, badass women.
She's locked horns with everyone who crosses her path. Billy Corgan, Axl Rose, Marilyn Manson, and Bikini Kill singer Kathleen Hanna even had Courtney arrested for assault in 1995. In 1992, she fought a nasty war of words with Vanity Fair's Lynn Hirschberg over the writer's allegations that Courtney abused heroin during her pregnancy.
If they want to remember us as the parents who supposedly gave their baby drugs, you know, fine. Yeah.
In 1994, husband Kurt Cobain committed suicide. It was the tragic end to a turbulent marriage. After Kurt's death, she mutated from grunge goddess to glitzy Hollywood vixen, calling into question Courtney's badass status.
Oh, make me over.
I can't figure out whether she's Gwyneth Paltrow or you know, Greta Garbo, you know. I mean, I liked her better when she was Nancy Spungen.
Courtney Love has definitely had her share of trouble, but you know, a true badass survives, and she survived by landing some killer acting roles and releasing best-selling albums. Not bad.
American badass!
It's Kane. This is the Rock Show, Top 40 Badass Countdown. Counting down the biggest badasses of all time. We're all the way up to number 10 now, which means we've done 30. There's a lot more badass to come. Wendy O. Williams never hit the mainstream, but as the singer of the Plasmatics, she definitely paved the way for a lot of the women in the future of rock and roll. You know, her extreme stage antics and performances earned her the respect of her fellow musicians, and well, she made music the way she wanted to, and for that, she's a badass.
Number 10 on the list of top 40 badasses, the late Wendy O. Williams. She had a thing for power tools, no respect for automotive engineering, and a truly lawless fashion sense.
I got a reputation. People know who I am.
Wendy had an insatiable appetite for destruction, exploding cars, chainsawing guitars. That was her idea of quality entertainment.
I'm known for being the loudest, the most excessive.
And she got out there and she just did what she wanted to do.
In 1981, she was charged with performing a lewd act with a sledgehammer. When an arresting officer allegedly groped her, she lashed out, cost her 7 stitches and the added charge of battery on a police officer.
Wendy O was a badass, certainly.
And she would get up there with, you know, tape covering her nipples. I mean, whatever she did, she played herself off as one of the guys more than she played herself off as a naked woman.
I'm an adrenaline freak. I mean, that's what gets me off, and I hope it gets a lot of other people off, too.
In 1980, she showed Tom Snyder how to dispose of a Chevy Vega, and in a death-defying stunt, drove a car through a wall of TV sets into the Hudson River.
She was one of the real trailblazers for women out there just living the punk rock aesthetic.
All right, it's about time.
Wendy lived life on the edge, and she never looked back. Pantera punches in at number 9. Is the Motor City Madman Ted Nugent. He turns his stage show into a safari. He takes his road rage to new levels, and he always speaks his mind because he doesn't care who he pisses off. On tour in Texas in April 2000, Ted offended the Latino community by urging non-English speakers to leave the country. One Houston arenas banned the Nuge forever.
So what if he's never allowed to play in Texas again because he'll play outside Texas and people will drive 6 hours to see him because they won't let him play in Texas?
There are some people that think that I'm a bad boy, but those are just either Gomers or country and western guys who can't handle the energy.
Ted's an intense guy, on stage and off.
He had rented a car and he was driving across a bridge, and some guys in a van, they cut him off, almost ran him off. On the Golden Gate Bridge, he rammed their car, man, with his car, and they tried to run him off the road then, they started getting in this whole thing on the bridge, and he pulled the gun out, waved it, bam, 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 shot up in the air and stuff. These guys, man, he said they freaked out.
The avid hunter even works his bow and arrow into his act.
Who's going to argue calling somebody a badass when they're armed with a bow and arrow half the time?
Well, anybody that can go out in the woods with a bow and arrow and shoot a deer from 100 yards away, cut it, clean it, take it home and stick it in your fridge to feed your family, that's pretty ballsy.
Ted may be a tough guy, but he does have one soft spot.
He had just an insatiable desire to sort of, do as much as he could with as many women as he could.
There was a time when he had 2 very young girlfriends. And I didn't like that at all.
He's crazy, and he's just still as sick as he's always been.
I'm just a dumb old aging greasy over the hill. What do they call him? Aging rock star guitar player.
You got a wango tango, baby!
Ted Nugent was a real rock and roll rebel. Songs like Wango Tango and Yank Me Crank Me, and of course, who could forget Wang Dang Sweet Poontang. There wasn't a whole lot left of the imagination. And on stage, Ted himself let everything just sort of hang out, wearing nothing but a loincloth and a coon's tail. Very business-minded and very smart, and don't get in his way because you might be sorry.
No more Mr. Nice Guy. Me, a nice guy.
In at number 6, Megadeth frontman Dave Mustaine. He strikes fear in the hearts of critics and fans and even his fellow badasses. He battled addiction and bounced back meaner than ever, but what does he care? Megadeth's Dave Mustaine is a badass, and he knows it.
You've got a lot of people that are perceived as badasses, like myself, Axl Rose, Phil from Pantera. There's a lot of people that are just, guys that just don't want to take any from anybody.
You put anyone in the room that I would not want to be on the bad side of, or lock it's Dave Mustaine. There is a demon in Dave that is just so powerful. When he wants to be bad, I've seen him bring people to tears, okay, with just his words.
You ruined my surprise.
Dave overcame addiction to drugs and alcohol, but sobriety didn't make him any sweeter.
I once said to Dave he was funnier when he was drunk.
Dave is like a viper. He'd be like all subdued, all almost defenseless, no arms, no legs, just laying across, but then like right across the room would lunge at you and kill you.
If you want to call your band Megadeth, you better earn the name.
When you hear the name Megadeth, you think of Dave Mustaine because of that snarling presence behind the microphone.
If you're up there and you're acting kind of mamby-pamby and you're in the rock business, then you should name your band Men at Work.
Well, we are up to the top 3 in the Rock Show Top 40 Bad.
Literally just defined badasses for a whole generation now. You've got Nikki Sixx, who died, was resuscitated, and then went and did more drugs. Their antics on stage, even recently, they're in the late 90s, they've been getting police following them from show to show, looking just because of the reputation they had in the 80s. These guys are they're legends.
And unlike a lot of our other badass legends, Motley Crue's not afraid to tell you why.
Rolling into the number 3 spot on our countdown is Motley Crue. They took rock and roll excess to a whole new level. They've been caught on tape doing the nasty, and they never walk away from a fight. The Crue's decade of decadence began in the early 80s, and from the beginning, this fearless foursome came out swinging.
Our very first concert ended in, I believe a couple people in the front row got their heads split open, and Vince was in the crowd, punching some guy.
The way I kind of remember is that somebody said something, hey, you,
or you look like my sister, or something like that. And Nicky took off his chain and started whacking this guy.
Those kind of stories would happen every single night.
We're like a porno movie. We give 100%. You get everything with the crew.
In 1998, Tommy Lee and his sometime spouse Pamela Anderson gave more than 100% when their steamy home movies were made public. Vince Neil's own video exploits turned up soon after.
Somebody just had a great idea that since the Tommy and Pam thing, you know, was so successful, I guess, that they ran across some tapes of me. But I was like, what can I do about it? You know, I'm not going to go fight somebody about it.
When it came to excess, nobody did it more excessively than the crew. In 1984, Vince Neil crashed his car, killing Hanoi Rocks drummer Razzle. 3 years later, Nicky Sixx OD'd and lived to tell.
The story is that my heart stopped, and they couldn't revive me. So they put me in the ambulance, 2 adrenaline needles into my chest, and I come back.
Even a near-death experience wouldn't slow Nicky down.
So I hitchhiked a ride home and cooked up the largest shot of heroin I've ever had. Shot it into my arm and passed out. Woke up the next day, the needle was still in my arm.
They lived the party life at 11, and they didn't stop. And when, you know, their bodies dictated that they stop, they overruled their bodies and went even harder.
A three-way tie for number 2 on the badass list. First up, Led Zeppelin drummer John Bonham. He put the fear of God into hotel clerks everywhere, was a notorious brawler, and died that timeless rocker death, choking on his own vomit after downing 40 shots of vodka.
John was a beautiful, beautiful guy until he started drinking too much. I mean, he would go from like the most beautiful guy to a total animal. And anything can happen in between. You don't really know, but anything could happen.
In 1977, Bonzo was busted in Oakland for severely beating a security guard, a charge that landed him a suspended sentence. He also had a thing for hotels. He rode a motorcycle through one while on tour in America, and in 1973 demolished another in France.
In Los Angeles, they would commandeer a couple floors of a hotel called the Continental Hyatt House, which they renamed the Continental Riot House because they used to have motorcycle races in the hall, and it's just sort of a general madhouse.
I think that the time when John Bonham was ruling the roost, I mean, I think it was a time period when being a bad boy of rock was what it was all about.
Bonham played, fought, and drank like it was the end of the world. Eventually, it was.
He just lived the party lifestyle that literally led him to his death.
Just as wicked as it seems.
Tying Bonham for number 2 is the ageless badass Keith Richards. He epitomized badass style, survived numerous drug busts.
All right, last stop here on the Badass Express. Time to unveil the dubious honor of who's the number 1 badass. Most of the list was kind of hard to come up with, but I think everyone agrees that the number 1 badass, easy choice, Ozzy Osbourne.
Something I would say about Ozzy, though, is that he's probably considered like numero uno, number 1. But one of the things that I look at him, I see not only a guy who's got that, you know, put your head down and go for it attitude, but he's a far better musician than a lot of people give him credit for. I mean, he is unbelievable. As a singer, look at what he does with his voice and things like that. He never ceases to amaze me.
From his groundbreaking days with Black Sabbath to his very successful solo career, Ozzy Osbourne defined badass.
The number 1 badass of all time? Ozzy Osbourne. This heavy metal madman treated a national shrine like a porta potty. Tried to kill his wife, and fed his appetite for mayhem with a diet of helpless animals and endless drugs.
Like speed, coke, acid, smack, pot, hash, dance, barbiturates, quaaludes, booze, everything.
And when Ozzy says everything, he means everything.
There was a party one night at the Riot House. It was on the Motley Crue Ozzy tour, and they were like doing a who can do the most crazy thing, you know? But there was a whole line of ants going along the sidewalk, and Ozzy sniffed them.
And so Nicky whips out his and pisses on the ground. He gets down, Nicky goes to lick up his own urine. Before he can get down there, Ozzy pushes him out of the way, and Ozzy starts lapping up Nicky's urine.
Back at the moon.
One night back in 1989, Ozzy lost control and tried to strangle his wife and manager, Sharon.
We were always fighting, and it got to the point one night where he just lost it totally.
This went way beyond a fight. He was trying to kill her.
Next minute morning, I woke up, and I was in jail in England, and I'm like, what am I doing here? And the guy looks at me, he says, what do you mean, what are you doing here? I said, you've been arrested for attempting to murder your wife.
The charges were dropped, but the Ozman's wild antics weren't always so serious. In 1982, he scandalized the entire Lone Star State by relieving himself on the Alamo.
And I was standing there taking a leak up the Alamo, and this guy goes, you damn mother, damn, I gotta give him cursing, man. He goes, what would you do if I was to urinate at Buckingham Palace? I said, I wouldn't give a damn, man. I don't live there.
This is the guy that pissed on the Alamo. It doesn't get any better than that.
The former Black Sabbath frontman is most famous for his appetite for winged creatures.
He's a legend, and from the days of Black Sabbath to the drug-induced and alcohol-induced stupors to, his Ozzy solo days when he was biting the heads off bats, and even his days now where he may be off the juice, so to speak, but he's still the leader of all the badasses.
These days, Ozzy may be clean and sober, but he's still a living legend.
I mean, that guy is continuously badass up to the year 2000. So this one's for you, Ozzy.
You're the king. It's great. It's good to be the king.
After that, Ozzy needs no introduction, and I think for me, for sure, there's no question Ozzy is numero uno in the badass department. And I think for most of his fans, it wasn't the attitude or the antics or the crazy behavior that made him a badass. It was his music. That is it for the Rock Show Top 40 Badass Countdown. We hope you enjoyed it, or, we hope it pissed you off a little bit. Either way, fine by us. Don't forget to join us on the regular Rock Show every Friday at midnight for another dose of rock and roll. We'll see you then.
Well, there it is. The top 40 badasses of rock and roll with Ozzy at number one. Now, some of you will agree, some of you will disagree, so just throw it in the comments. Let's argue like a bunch of fanboys. But like and subscribe to my channel because you, yes, you never, ever know what I have in store. The only way that you will find out, stay tuned.